everyone, and welcome to this little tutorial on how you can personalise a boring old photo frame with mosaics. You can create your frame in any colours that you like and using any square tiles that take your fancy using this technique. And to get started with this project, you're going to need a photo frame, preferably one with a flat frame rather than a sloping or curved one, just for ease of placing the tiles. This can be made from any material, but wood works best as it is both chunky and light at the same time. For the tiles themselves, I'm using the matte tiles from the mixed Ottoman Tiles in 4 colours: purple, green, blue and red, and I'll pop a link for these down in the description below if you wanted to use the same tiles as me. You're also going to need some sandpaper, any gauge is absolutely fine. You'll need some pale grey grout, or white and black if you prefer to mix your own, a bowl and spoon for mixing, and some PVA glue for applying. You'll also need some wheeled nippers, as we will be cutting the tiles down just a little bit. And the first thing we're going to do is lightly sand the frame anywhere where we're going to be applying our tiles. Now, I don't plan on having any tiles on the inside edge, but I will go around the outside so I can leave the inside unsanded. This is just to roughen up the surface, giving the glue something to grip onto, and it means that your tiles will stick much more firmly. You can actually skip this part if you don't have any sandpaper, but you do run a much higher risk of the tiles coming loose if you do so. It's also a good idea before you start to just cut up some of the tiles into halves and quarters. Get enough together so that you've got a nice pool of them from which to pick. This will speed up the process so you don't have to keep stopping to cut tiles. And then you are ready to start placing them. Start from a corner and begin placing your tiles, and if you want to have a seamless border so that the tiles wrap right the way around the edge of the frame, then you will need your top facing tiles to go out over the edge of the frame by the same amount as the depth of one tile. So as you see here, the tiles on the top are going over the edge of the frame, but they are still in line with the tiles which are on the edges, so that everything is still flat and the corner is still a nice sharp right angle. It's a good idea as well to start at corners because these tend to be the trickiest, as you need the tiles to match both the top and the side edges. Luckily though, because we're using PVA glue to stick the tiles down, you do have quite a long time before it sets, so you can have a good play around with them to get them just right at this stage. Gluing is easiest on this project as well if you put a bit down on the wood and then spread it very thinly just with a finger. This way it will dry slightly and become quite tacky. And that can really help hold those tiles in place firmly so that they're not sliding around and reacting to gravity. Once you're happy with your corner, you can start placing more tiles, trying to keep them random but as neat as possible, and with even spacing and nice straight lines. Fill up as much of the space as you like with one colour, and then move on to the next one. As you start the new colour, you may want to add the odd tile of the previous colour, as you'll find that it blends the two together much more seamlessly rather than having that instant change of colour. And then just repeat the process. Keep placing the tiles fairly randomly, being careful where you're completing edges to keep the tiles in line with each other, keep those edges nice and sharp and a good strong right angled corner. How much of each part of the frame you dedicate to one colour is very much up to you, and it certainly doesn't have to be quarters like I'm doing. Also, make sure you don't neglect the sides of the frame though, and you'll need to decide if you want to have a neat edge so that the entirety of the side is covered, or are you going to leave it a bit rough and random like I'm doing so it looks like it's a little bit incomplete. I like that look on this frame. But just keep placing those tiles, and when it is ready to change colour again, blend the two together exactly as you have, and keep going until you have filled up the entire front of the frame with mosaic and as much of the sides as you'd like. Then set the whole piece to one side in order to let it dry. And once your tiles have dried and they're now firmly attached and they're not going to go anywhere when you start grouting, then it is time to mix your grout. To make a very pale grey mix, you're going to need about 3/4 white grout to 1/4 of black. Then you can add just enough water to bind the mixture together into a thick, dark grey looking paste. Don't worry if it looks very dark at this stage, it will dry very much paler. And once mixed, you can start working it into your mosaics, trying not to get any grout on the inside wooden part of the frame if you can help it. But don't worry if you do, because it will just wipe away with a damp cloth. Once the whole piece is thoroughly covered in grout and you've worked it into all of the little gaps and nooks and crannies so that there's not going to be any holes, then you can use a damp cloth to remove the excess grout. You're not going to get it completely clean at this point, we're just aiming to remove as much of the excess as we possibly can. It will leave a slight film over the tiles, but that's absolutely fine. And also make sure you remove any grout that's gotten on the inside of the wood. Once you have removed as much as possible, place your mosaic to one side to allow it to dry. And once dry, you can then use a damp cloth once again to remove those last few remnants of grout on the tile. Now is the time to take your time and make sure that it looks as neat as possible, because this is going to be your final finish. Don't worry if the damp cloth makes the grout darken again, that is not permanent and it will lighten once again as it dries. But after this final buff, your mosaic photo frame is now ready to use. You can replace the glass insert if you removed it and add a picture of your choice. Anywho though, I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial for creating a Mosaic's photo frame. Thanks for watching and I will see you again soon.